Ai, Deus! É ele!
Essa é uma mudança e tanto para o senhor, professor.
Lá. Em vez do... Já entendeu? Nunca tive esse...
Nem eu.
De repente, o telefone...
3 mesmo? Tá bom. Gosto que me ache engraçado.
E você é capaz de me ajudar?
Deixe eu dizer uma coisa primeiro. Uma operação secreta está sendo preparada no Extremo Oriente e seu nome foi indicado pelo computador como um dos 3 mais capazes de...
Yeah, that was actually Rambo talking in Portuguese. In this episode, I want to talk about why it is very important that you open your books and start studying Portuguese before you actually consider moving to Brazil. Now, even as a tourist, one of the biggest complaints I hear about tourists is the fact that the Brazilians, they don't really understand the English language. There are actually a lot of Brazilians who do understand a little bit of English. However, the majority, they're quite shy. They don't really want to talk, they don't really practice the language. It is a real challenge, especially as a tourist, and especially if it's your first time in Brazil. If you don't know a single word of Portuguese, then of course communicating with the local can be quite challenging. I want to talk about why I think it's extremely important that you start learning Portuguese as fast as possible if you're even considering moving to Brazil, because the sooner you start to study the language, the sooner you start to learn the Portuguese language, you will have a head start when arriving in Brazil for the first time. So join me as I'll be discussing a little bit of why I think it's a good idea to learn the Portuguese language. So can you guess what the most spoken language is in the continent of South America? Well, it is indeed Spanish. But let's look at the entire continent, okay? Let's look at all the countries and what is their native language. Now, if we take South America and the Spanish-speaking countries, okay? We have Colombia, Argentina, Venezuela, Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Bolivia, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Suriname. Now, all of these countries combined make up a population of 214 million Spanish-speaking people. If we take Brazil by itself, one country, there are 211 million people speaking the Portuguese language. So it's quite amazing how many people actually speak Portuguese in the continent of South America. I bet you didn't know that. I don't think that, it's not the Brazilians' fault that they're not good at speaking English. Far from it. I mean, the majority of countries in South America, but not even South America. I mean, even in Europe, you have certain countries where, they don't speak a lot of English. It's not their fault. What I basically think it is the government's fault that they're not, prioritizing this in their education. And I think learning a new language is quite difficult. It's not easy. And the older you get, it's the more challenging it gets. And I think most, you look at here in Norway, we start already, at a very, very early age. And English is actually widely spoken here in Norway, especially this generation growing up. Most of the children here already know quite a bit of English. And beside Norway, you have the Netherlands, but you have certain countries that have really prioritized of learning the English language. The reason why, we here in Norway and, other countries, why they have been so successful is because of the implementation of, learning English in school at a very, very young age. Because I think as a child, children, their brains are still they are very easy to receive this information and, you know, to soak up all of this knowledge. As you grow up, you know, as your brain develops, you know, it becomes ever more difficult to process this information, especially of learning new languages. It just becomes a lot more challenging. And I think also this is also one of the reasons why, take Brazil for instance, that, you know, their lack in English is just because of the fact that, you know, there is basically no education. There is no education in English, you know. It's not until they got into college or they take, you know, start taking private lessons out of school and start working and have a little bit of money, they want to learn a different language, you know. And it just becomes a lot more challenging. But it's not as simple as that. There are also other factors to the lack of the English language in Brazil. Just as I showed you in the intro of the video, everything that is basically aired on TV is already dubbed in Portuguese. I mean, they rarely show anything in the original language. And of course, this doesn't really help, you know, to evolve, to practice your skills or even to listen to the English language. It's basically everything you see is in Portuguese. And I recently just opened up, you know, the website to my local cinema just close to where I live in Brazil. I just had a look and you can see the majority of the films showing there are actually in Portuguese and dubbed. You can actually see, you know, in the original language as well, but they are fewer, you know, in between. You know, the times when they are shown is, you know, very few compared to the majority, which is actually dubbed in the Portuguese language. And what I find surprising is even, you know, you have the biggest cable company, Sky, you know, Sky Brazil, and it's quite pricey, you know. You gotta pay quite a lot to get, you know, some of these movie channels. And a lot of these channels as well, I mean, some of them they will show in, you know, the original language, but as a lot of them also, they will only show them in the Portuguese language. And I think it's amazing, you know, especially when you pay so much for a monthly fee that you expect to see, you know, or expect to have a choice at least to see these movies in the original language. But this just goes to show again the lack of willingness, you know, to actually just accept that, okay, we do have another language, you know, Portuguese is not the only language spoken, you know, and the importance of learning a new language, especially English. And what also amazes me, you know, if you go out to restaurants or whatever, you can see a lot of these, you know, if you open up the menu, the Brazilians will try to translate, you know. And it's a lot of this is just, you know, Google Translate, or maybe they have a friend who knows a little bit of English and it's just kind of guesswork. And sometimes it just gets really comical. But, and I kind of feel sorry for them because they truly want to communicate and they see, you know. But I think nowadays, you know, the importance of learning a new language and for the Brazilians, you know, it's just getting ever more stronger, you know, because now tourism is exploding in Brazil. Everything around the world is, you know, every single year, of course, it's getting more international. You know, people are, you know, especially now after pandemic, people are starting to travel again. And it's kind of a shame, and I'm quite surprised that, you know, the Brazilian government hasn't, you know, prioritized this even further, you know, to implement, you know, the English language in their studies, you know, in school. So I'm quite surprised about that. But I do have a lot of Brazilian friends who actually do, a lot of my Brazilian friends, they actually do study English and they know quite a bit of English, you know. But I think another problem, like I said, going back to like everything being aired on, you know, on TV, you know, dubbed in the Portuguese language, it doesn't, you know, even if you practice, if you try to learn a new language, I think the key to learning a new language is practice, is speaking, you know, just talk, you know, just always, you need to practice all the time, you know. And I think like, if they would start just showing more stuff in English and, you know, you can have it, you can have with subtitles in Portuguese. I don't see the problem, you know, but if they at least started somewhere, at least started there, you know, at least they would get some sort of input, you know, in the English language. And I think that would help tremendously in the progress of, you know, educating the Brazilian people in speaking English. So what does all this mean? I mean, my channel is basically, it's for expats, it's for people visiting Brazil, you know. And if you've never been to Brazil, or if you just think of going on a holiday, I mean, even then, I think it would be a good idea to at least learn some very basic words and phrases. And if you do consider moving to Brazil, then absolutely, I think you should start today, right now, and there should be absolutely no delays. You should really start to learn the Portuguese language, because the faster you start, you know, the easier it's gonna get when you get to Brazil. And remember, I've been living in Brazil for 16 years. I'm more or less fluent, but even today, even after 16 years of living in Brazil, I do have difficulty from time to time to, you know, to understand everything that's being said. And that is especially if I'm in a group together with a bunch of Brazilians, especially the younger generation, because there is a lot of dialect, there is a lot of slang, and it's really hard, you know, sometimes to follow along. And not even to talk about, you know, coming into discussing politics. It is very tricky, you know. I lose track very quickly because there is a lot of terminology and a lot of phrases, a lot of words that I still don't understand. So, I mean, I would say I'm pretty much fluent, but it's very basic. I mean, if you take the basic vocabulary, you know, of course I have no problems communicating. I can go into a bank and open a bank account. I can do all these sorts of stuff that I need to, you know, that is absolutely necessary for me to live my daily life in Brazil. Everything else is not that important, you know. But I think, you know, you need to at least learn the basics so you can at least communicate, and, you know, you can live your life like day to day, like a normal person, you know, in Brazil, without needing to take up your Portuguese dictionary every single time, you know. So I think that is extremely important. So the faster you start, the easier it's gonna get for you. And another important thing to remember that I also think is very important, and a lot of people they forget or they neglect to do, is when you do start learning a language, like I mentioned earlier as well, you do need to practice. You don't be afraid to go out and talk, you know, just open your mouth, talk to the locals. And even if they don't understand you, even if you don't understand them, it doesn't matter, at least talk, you know. You need to have that courage to go out and practice and talk. Yep, they will laugh at you, they will have a giggle, and they will think it's extremely funny. Look at the gringo, he's talking like really weird. But remember, just don't get offended by it, okay? It's just the way it is, you know. People are gonna have a chuckle at your poor, you know, Portuguese skills. But in the end, I think inside, most of the locals, they will actually be quite impressed that you're actually making an effort and trying to speak the language, okay? And also remember that, you know, you're probably far ahead of them when it comes to, you know, learning a new language in Portuguese than, you know, because the majority of, you know, the Brazilians, they don't know a word of English anyway, so don't worry about it, okay? People are gonna laugh, and that's just how it is. But don't be afraid to talk. You need to talk, you need to practice. You just need to talk all the time, okay? Another very important and very good tip that I have for you is the way that I learned to speak Portuguese, and it was relatively fast. You shouldn't be too worried about your grammar, okay? About, you know, speaking the correct way or everything like that. I mean, don't worry about this stuff. What you should actually do, and what I find to be extremely helpful, is to learn phrases. Learn one phrase every single week, okay? Maybe two phrases, depending on how you feel, you know, how you feel you progress yourself, okay? But at least learn one phrase every single week. Put on one phrase and memorize it, and learn every single word in that phrase, what it means, and then memorize a phrase, okay? And then start another phrase, and then another phrase, and then and mix up the phrases, you know, mix them up in different scenarios. And then after a while, you will find out that after memorizing all of these phrases and you know all the meanings of the words, it is very easy. You can start building your own sentences. Of course, the grammar is probably not going to be correct, yeah, because the Portuguese grammar is in fact extremely complex, and even my grammar is not nearly perfect. You know, even the Brazilians themselves have issues, you know, problems with correct grammar and speaking, you know, in the correct manner. So don't worry about that at all. I mean, I think when you're moving to Brazil or any country for that matter, I think the most important thing is your ability to be able to communicate with the population, with the locals, and of course to understand what they are saying as well. I mean, that is key. That should be your absolute focus, your absolute goal when you move to another country. The grammar, and when you want to build on that at a later date, if you do want to speak absolutely perfectly, then I'm sure there are a lot of courses and a lot of, you know, you can take that a step further as soon as you get comfortable into your new country. However, in the beginning, don't worry about it, because your brain is just going to be overloaded, and you know you're gonna get demotivated, and then you're just gonna give up anyway. So that's not the way to go. So that is my best tip for you, is just learn simple phrases, at least one phrase every single week, and then you memorize that, and then you take a new phrase. But just remember, you need to understand exactly the meaning of the phrase and every single word, what it means by itself, and then afterwards you evolve from that, okay? Then after a while you can start mixing up and building your own phrases, and that is basically how I did it. And I found out that just after a year of studying, you know, I was already able to have more or less a normal conversation with you know, one of the locals. So that is a tip for you. Another tip is also, you should go to the bookstores and you should buy the children's books. You know, a lot of the children's books with pictures and everything, because it's very simple, and you get the pictures and you get very simple phrases. You can use those just as, you know, as a tool to help you out, you know. And a lot of these children's books, they're maybe just, you know, 10 or 20 pages, and you know, they have certain phrases with the pictures. After a while, if you memorize that entire book, you know, already you are far ahead to learning a new language, you know. And it's just, you need to understand, you need to start somewhere, okay? Don't take everything, don't try to master everything at once, because it is not gonna work. That is how a lot of people, they try to learn, you know, a new language way too fast and way too complex, you know, and they just get demotivated and they give up basically. And lastly, and I already mentioned this, you know, a couple of times, I'm gonna mention this again, because I think this is just key, you know, to your success of learning a new language, is practice. Just don't be afraid to talk. You need to talk a lot. And this has also to do with your, you know, for you to learn the pronunciation of the Portuguese language, because basically as an English speaker, and for me as a Norwegian speaker as well, you know, the pronunciation is very complex, it's very different, okay? It's quite a challenge. And especially after a while, when you actually start to learn the language, and after a while, if you do make some Brazilian friends, and you will see that a lot of Brazilians, they actually do know quite a bit of English. There are people who do know quite a bit of English, but like I mentioned, they are very shy, they're afraid to practice, they're afraid to talk. And when they do speak English, you will hear that their biggest issue is their pronunciation. And sometimes it is, I don't want to say it, but a lot of times the pronunciation is just so bad that you don't really understand what they're saying. I mean, they are speaking correctly, they're saying the right words, they are, you know, everything is correct, but the pronunciation is just, it's so poor, you know, it's so different that you can't really understand what they are trying to say.
In Brazil, we have many agents, but many agents is like
It's retired.
it's retired. Yes.
And that is going to be exactly the same challenge for you learning the Portuguese language. it's pronunciation, okay? So it goes both ways, you know, and I think also that has also to do with the difference, you know, a lot of Portuguese that will opt to learning Spanish because it's a lot easier for them with the pronunciation, to learn the grammar, to learn, you know, it's just a lot easier and they learn a lot faster than learning the English language. So you're gonna have the same difficulty as them, but I think the key to this is just practice. Don't be afraid to talk, okay? And with that, I'm just gonna wish you the best of luck. But remember, guys, if you are thinking about moving to Brazil, then you will definitely suffer if you don't put in the effort and learn the Portuguese language, okay? It is possible, you know. I do have a couple of friends from the US who have lived actually in Brazil longer than I have, that barely speak a word of Portuguese, and that is possible. They are all retired, so, you know, they don't really, you know, they don't have a business, so they don't really, you know, it's basically like a holiday for them, you know. But I'm talking about especially if you're going to start any sort of business or whatever. But I mean, why wouldn't you want to learn the language? Because it opens so many doors to you. And especially traveling around in Brazil, which is just an amazing country. It's, you know, the people are amazing and you will meet so many interesting people. And just to, you know, to be able to go out to a restaurant, to a bar or whatever, just take a taxi, you know, talk, you know, have a talk with the taxi cab, you know. I mean, haven't you ever wondered that, you know, sit in a taxi and ask the taxi driver, how was your day, you know, how you know, how was business, you know, or going to a restaurant or whatever. You know, to be able to communicate with the local population is extremely useful, but it's also extremely interesting, and it makes your experience just so much better. Okay, guys, so please do me this big favor and open up the book, start studying right now. And with that, I wish you all the best of luck. Okay, guys? Okay, so at least I hope you find that somewhat useful, okay? If you like my videos, a thumbs up would be fantastic. It does help me out. And of course, if you do like my content, you know, consider subscribing to my channel. As I mentioned in my previous videos, you know, I'm not uploading as much as I would like to, and this has to do with the fact that just go and watch my previous videos. I'll explain everything there and you can see what's going on in my life. But basically, you know, I am still working out my business. Recently divorced. I don't have a house, I don't have an apartment, you know, but I'm focusing on my business and I want to grow that. So hopefully in the near future, I will have my apartment, I will have my life back in order again. And then I can, you know, start focusing on making some better quality content for this channel here. Okay, guys, so I apologize for the lack of content, but anyways, whatever content I put out, I hope you enjoy it. And with that, good luck on your adventures, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Okay, take care, guys. Bye bye. Ciao.